this video, I'm going to show how I made this Henly t-shirt. T-shirt from Danny Shoes pattern. It's a free pattern. You can download it. To make the Henly t-shirt. And I carefully cut the pattern pieces out. We have the plackets, the neck binding, and the cuffs, and the front and the back. So here I've cut all the pattern pieces according to the pattern. And on the right side of the placket, I just cut it on this side and this side, and then I'll just serge it. I mark the line and I'll serge it across the line, just so that I don't lose this little tiny piece underneath the serger. The next step is to attach the plackets, and I'll start with the right front, and this is the little star to the little star, and then we're going to face these together, right sides to right sides, and I'm going to sew that seam to the tip of the V. I'm just going to mark it here. This fabric is really stretchy, so I'm going to use a tearaway stabilizer to sew. And then the next step, after this one is attached, I'll attach this side, and this one is just fold it and attach it the same way up to the mark, up to the V. I've applied the facing and the placket. The right side gets turned around like this. And then I'm going to mark it on top and stitch along the marked line. Just going to mark it with a heat erasable stabilizer. And then this side gets turned around as well. And then it just gets top stitched across here. And then across again. So the pattern calls for 2 double stitch on the end of it. And the front opening is done. And on the pattern it says to fold this up, but I thought that would be too much bulk. So what I did was I attached it to the other placket with a zigzag stitch. And the next step is to attach the shoulders together. And then for the binding, I cut it longer than what I need, but I did mark the ends of it, the shoulders, the center, and the other end. And I'm going to attach it starting at at the end over here. I'm going to pin it all the way around, right sides to right sides. So just a little tip, once you've got your binding all pinned, what I like to do is I fold this back like this and pin it, and then you can cut it a little bit so it's not so long, because I made it longer than I needed it to be. So that way when you turn your binding around, you don't have to fiddle with folding that over, because it'll already be folded. So do that on both sides and attach the binding. I'm going to cut it this much. Now I've attached my binding, and I'm going to trim the little corner here. And the other corner. You can also trim your collar. And then we're going to turn this around. And normally you would fold this and fold it again to make the binding, but I'm not going to fold it. I'm just going to sew it like this without folding it. And then I'm going to trim the excess. And then top stitch all the way around. So I basted the binding first. I just did my basting stitch right underneath where I was going to sew, so I can remove it easy. Those stitches. And of course I use the tearaway stabilizer for my sewing. Otherwise my machine doesn't like this fabric at all. And I'm doing a straight stitch, so if I don't use the stabilizer, it'll start skipping stitches. I also used a smaller than normal stitch. And now what I'll do is I will trim this. And you can use a regular scissors. This one is just easier. It's meant for embroidery. And I'll just trim it all the way around like that. I'm gonna do it off camera because I'm standing to the side of the camera and this is really difficult for me. See, and this is not gonna fray. So you don't have to worry about how it looks, and it creates a lot less bulk. It looks just as nice. The next step, I'll attach the sleeves. I'm gonna baste them first and then sew them on. And after I'm done attaching the sleeves, I'm gonna put the cuffs on and do the top stitching on the cuffs before I close the sides. The sleeve cuffs, you just have to fold them in half and attach them to the end of the sleeve. The cuffs are slightly smaller than the sleeve, so just stretch it when you're pinning and then put one pin in the middle. And once I sew them, I'll flip it around and do top stitching. Here I attached the cuff and did the top stitching. And at this point, you can trim this if you want. And then I attach the sleeves. I'm gonna baste them by hand first because they're so small. This is hard to sew sometimes. Okay, I've attached one sleeve, and then I'm gonna finish it off with a little zigzag stitch because this is another one that's kind of hard to put into the serger. And a little trick that I have when I'm doing sleeves is that I try to sew everything in the flat. So I make it flat like this, and this part is going to go towards the bottom. And when I'm sewing it, I'm sewing it like this, going around like that, nice and flat. I'm going to be using the tearaway stabilizer, so I'll just pin it on the stabilizer. And I'll just go around. Flat. So when I'm sewing, basically I'm sewing in a straight line and making sure I don't get the pleats in there, and make sure the bottom is nice and flat. I do this for all my sleeves because the sleeves on doll clothes, you can't really do them the way that you do adult. So they have to be sewn, that it's easier to sew them this way. So now I have a nice even hem at the sleeve, and all I have to do is take out the stabilizer. You can do this with paper too. It's kind of like paper piecing in the quilt world. See how nice that sleeve comes out? And now I'm going to do the sides and finish the hem at the bottom, and our shirt will be finished. All right, I finished the side seams and the hem. I used that serpentine stitch on the machine to do the hem, and I opted not to do, not to serge the bottom, because I think it looks nicer that way. And I'll trim it also. Then I'll take my serger tails and hide them. You can also use seam sealant and just cut them. So this is it. This is my finished second attempt at the Henly tee. In the first one, I did this placket on top, but I really like the way this one looks better. I also folded over the neck, and as you can see, it looks a little bit not as good as this one does. I also did a double stitch on this one, and I did not, I also serged it. No, I didn't serge it. I just did the double stitch. But I like the way this one looks better. And it stretches. So that's it. Thank you for watching.